online, on your mobile, and on your smart speaker. You're listening to the voice of a new generation. This is Kick Radio.
Hi, I'm your host for this week, Cameron Gorman. Welcome to the South Bank podcast. I'm here with Jacob Jones and Sami Ahmed. How are we after our first home win of the season? Finally,
we're winning the
3
league.
points.
We're winning the league.
Title charge starts now. 3 points at Molineux, and briefly we were up to 17th. However, because of a wonder Ipswich result yesterday against Tottenham away, we are back down to 17th. But, 18th, sorry.
19th.
But, 19th. Oh, gosh, it really does get more depressing, doesn't it? How are we feeling after the home win?
It's honestly, I was saying to you, because obviously we travel back to Manchester on the day, it just feels like such a relief. I know it was only Southampton they are for, but we've done such a run. It just felt so good finally. Like, come home from the football with a smile on my face. It felt like it wasn't a chore. It felt like it's what I actually wanted to do this weekend.
Yeah. For me, it's obviously we needed a win. We definitely needed a win. Like, if we even said as well last week, like if we had lost, then Gary Neal was gone. But we won. Obviously, it is against Southampton, but we'll take a win. A win's a win. We'll take a win. We'll take the 3 points. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with the result. We deserve that.
I think we can all agree that a win is something that takes a massive weight off the players, staff, and even ourselves, the fans' shoulders. I think we really needed that so we can try and turn our fortunes around this season. Let's get straight into it. The initial result, 2-0 at home. I think the most important part of that is the clean sheet. We haven't had one since February before this. And 2-0 could have been more. There was a late Jean-Ric Bellegarde chance that we could have scored. But let's go with the initial result and your thoughts. Let's start with the first half. I'll go over to you, Sami. What were you thinking?
Yeah, so obviously, first couple of minutes, obviously, when we kicked off, we played strong. And then, obviously, when Cunha got the ball and laid it off to Sarabia, it was a beautiful, beautiful play. And obviously, to see Sarabia score again, it boosts up. I apologise, Pablo Sarabia, for all the hate I've been giving you for the past couple of weeks. You've proved me wrong. But, yeah, no, it's nice to see Pablo Sarabia back in action, back smiling, back in happy form, and we love to see it. I reckon from the first half, we did play quite well. There were a couple like chances where, well, not chances. There was a couple of parts of the game where, we could have strengthened in a bit. Obviously, Southampton, like no hate given to them. Like they played very, very well with the ball. Obviously, they are a possession-based team. So there were a couple of parts of the game where it looked like they were about to have chances of scoring, but obviously, from first half, we played well. I didn't see it, and then obviously going 1-0 up at the half-time break, it gave us a boost that we needed.
Jacob, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so obviously first, I think I owe Pablo Sarabia a big apology, not for the podcast last week, but for about the hour before kickoff, where it was constantly just asking why this guy started, and then takes his goal very well in the first few minutes, shuts us all up. That's one way, to respond to criticism. But funny enough, what he should have done last week when he had the chance to do it against Henderson rather than, not, put the ball. But first half, I actually thought we were quite poor, and I think that reflected by the atmosphere in the ground. Despite being 1-0 up, it was almost a quite frustrating half football where we got that goal and we seemed to sit back. I know my dad wasn't a fan of the back five going into this game, and it kind of showed his point in that first half where it was very negative, it was very defensive, rather than pushing on for that second goal, which ultimately, when we did start to push on in the second half, we found relatively quickly. And all due respect to Southampton, I believe if we would have pushed on in that first half or second half, it could have been a 3 or a 4, because I think defensively they're very fragile. But I think definitely a lot more positives this week. I don't want to be moaning all the time. And a very strong second half, but first half still did leave a bit to be desired, despite going in the straight 1-0 up.
Well, I do have to agree. We have both ends of the coin here, the happy, optimistic Sammy and the pessimistic Jacob. However, personally, my thoughts on the first half, I do have to side with you, Jacob. I think in some areas we were quite poor. There was a half chance with Strand Larson that Sammy spoke to me about earlier, actually, where he looks to the left, he sees Sarabia making run, he plays it out to the right where nobody was. I thought that was quite a disappointing half chance, although a half chance, nevertheless, it was. I think starting things firstly with the goal, like you said, Jacob, last week Pablo had the same opportunity, although I think it's clear to note he tried to take it around Henderson and he wasn't on his favoured left foot, he was on his right. Tried to do this again this week and it was successful. Gets around the keeper, slots home for a nice first goal. And funnily enough, that is our fastest ever Premier League goal, which was a stat that did surprise me actually when I first heard it. But that is Wolves' fastest Premier League goal ever scored by Pablo Sarabia. I thought there was 2 Southampton mistakes in the lead up to that goal, however, and we were almost quite lucky to make the chance, not to discredit the boys at all. One thing neither of you chose to address yet, and I'm glad you didn't, because I think this is our first real talking point. What were your thoughts on the Southampton VAR decision? Because personally for me, when we were watching it, I do think Semedo tries to play the ball. I think, okay, I can see why it's been disallowed, but I do understand now upon seeing the replays and watching stuff like Match of the Day, I really hate to say it, I think we might have been the lucky team here. I think they are very unlucky to have their goal disallowed and no penalty either. I think when it happened in the ground, me and you, Jacob, we were both expecting nothing to happen about that goal that they scored. Perhaps a penalty yourself. I heard a few people mention around us, but I'll go over to you first, Jacob, because of that. What were your thoughts on the disallowed goal by VAR?
I think it should have been disallowed. I think Semedo has got an intent to play the ball, and Fernandez comes behind him, buckling off his ankle, takes him out. I think you have to, in them scenarios, defender will always be, almost covered up in them kind of situations. I think, is it maybe a little bit soft? Potentially. But, in comparison to something we've seen, I think it should be ruled out. I think that happens in the middle of the pitch. It's foul, on back line. So I don't think it's as big of a, talking point as it's been made out to be. I don't think Southampton were robbed or anything like that. I think, it's a fair enough decision. Had they maybe given the goal, would that be, unjust? Would we have been robbed? Maybe not. But I do believe the correct decision was made. That might just be wolf-tinted glasses. But I do believe that, after looking at it, the correct decision was made.
That is completely understandable. I think in some regards we might be owed one by VAR. It's Gary O'Neill's been well known to be against it, as it's not very been favourable for him. However, Sami, what were your thoughts on the decision?
I'd have to, in a retrospective term, I'd have to disagree with Jacob in a way, because obviously you see Semedo, and obviously he tried to pass the ball, and then obviously I watched in the post-match conference when Southampton manager was talking about it and everything, and his thoughts and everything, and rage about it. And when we see it on the stream, we saw obviously the on-field review of the VAR, and you can actually see that Semedo tries playing off the ball a bit. So, in all fairness, I agree with Jacob in some aspects. I don't think Southampton were robbed in any way, but it's nice to obviously see a VAR on our side for once. So, yeah, I mean, my personal opinion, I reckon the VAR was the decision that was actually made was the incorrect decision, because if you see it and you actually look in depth into it, you can actually see that Semedo does try to play off the ball a bit, and to me that doesn't seem like it's a foul to us. Obviously I'm not going to argue, because it's not like it's coming for our way, like it's helping us in a way, but then for Southampton, obviously newly promoted to the Prem, and then having VAR turn against them and everything, I understand their thoughts and frustrations, but at the end of the day, they're going to have to deal with the same pain that we've dealt for the past couple of seasons where we've been shafted with VAR. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's I think that it was an incorrect decision made. I reckon it should have been a goal to Southampton, but that's coming from a Wolves fan. So yeah.
I do have to agree with you there, Sammy. I think we were quite lucky to get away with that one in some regards. I feel like Semedo, he uses his body to try and almost shield the ball out, to let it go out play for perhaps a corner or something. I do feel we are quite lucky to get that decision going our way, but I think it's been quite a while since Wolves have had the rub of the green, especially when it comes to VAR. Look at City recently. We had a point taken away from us there, and I will not complain, but this set us on our way to 3. And a much needed 3 at that. Let's go on to half-time now. Who was the special guest at Molineux? Who turned that season around?
Neves, Ruben Neves. I just don't think you understand.
It was nice to hear that chant ringing around Molineux again this week. Our former captain, Ruben Neves, honestly, made my day to see that man in Molineux again. It's just a shame he didn't bring his boots with him. I think that was the loudest we've heard Molineux in quite some time, singing Ruben Neves' chant at half-time. And it brought him to tears, and he said to the fans, just make sure you bring that energy to the boys in the second half. And luckily we did. So let's move on to the second half. Can Neves watch us every week? Because what a turnaround in that second half in terms of our performance levels. I thought, despite a lack of possession, Southampton having 71% of the ball in the game overall. Wow, what a goal by Cunha, first of all. Let's just talk about the goal to start with, but what are your thoughts on an absolute screamer? Neves would be proud of himself. Sami, I'll go to you first.
Oh, it was a beautiful goal, beautiful strike. He comes in, it goes down towards the right-hand side and then just kills it into the left side. Oh, magnifico, magnifico. You'd love to see it. Cunha, like last season, I think it was it 14 or 15 goals and assists? Like that's, I think
around
that's
that, around that.
Around that, yeah. And then so far this season, when we haven't even hit Christmas yet, and he's already on 5 goals and 2 assists. So, I can see this Cunha being a really, really having a good turnaround this season. And I reckon this season is his season. A beautiful strike. Obviously, rams out and he tries to save it, but it's too tight enough for him to put his hands on. So, it was beautiful. Cunha, honestly, he is our main man. He is our main man to help Wolves get the points that we need.
Definitely becoming something of a talisman, the Brazilian. Jacob, what were your thoughts on an excellent goal?
Yeah, so you spoke about Neves first. I'd just like to say a few words about that. I think it was obviously brilliant to hear. He is Wolves, right? There's no doubt about it. That a player has such a connection with the fan. It's rare to see that. And I think it definitely gave the fans a lift for the second half, like you said. I think the atmosphere was far better in that second half. I meant it being quite a frustrated atmosphere in Molineux in the first half. I think that frustration is lifted. And onto the goal, wow. I mean, again, arguments of foul on the halfway line, but I think you got to put the context. The ref was letting them go all game. So if he blew up that one, it would have been rather frustrating. But he picked up the ball and it's just, they're backing off. And you give Mateus Cunha, a player of his quality, that space. That's what he's going to produce, past that not very nice man in the Southampton goal, which made it slightly more tasteful for us. He's got such great ability, that player. And, it's starting to be noticed by people outside of Wolves, which may not be a great thing for us. But I'm seeing TikTok, whatever, saying he's the best player in the bottom half of the Premier League, which is a bold shout, but on form, he could be. Single-handedly, we got the goal and the assist, may I mention, a brilliant assist on the weekend. So he's got us the 3 points. He got us the point against Brighton. So that's a lot of our points this season have come from that man just being clinical in that final third. So if we do stay up this season, I think he'll have a massive part to play in it.
I do have to agree. I think without Mateus Cunha, we could certainly be very far adrift at the bottom. The Brazilian has become Mr. Wolves this season, really, and I'd say going across the second half of last, he's when he really found his feet. I think the notice you addressed, Jacob, he's been getting a lot of noise about him from people outside of the club. Say Micah Richards, I don't know if any of you watched Match of the Day, and Gary Lineker, they were full of praise for him. There's a lots of commentators addressing his fine form. And unfortunately, when a player at a club like us is making these sorts of performances, producing these sorts of numbers, he was our top assists, goal scorers, chances created, touches in the opposition box this season. He's the leader in all of our key attacking stats. The team really does flow through him. Gary O'Neill said in his post-match press conference how much work they do with Mateus to be that team player and be that heartbeat of the squad. And you really do see it in the way Wolves play in the transition. But ultimately, when a player's attracting this sort of attention, it does leave us with room to worry. How long will he be here? Can we see him being here past this season, Sami?
Yeah, I can. Because I think we've got. See, we signed him. When was it? It was 3 years ago now.
January in the January under Lopetegui.
Yeah. So obviously, when we signed him, it wasn't the best season that he had. Obviously, being coming into the Prem, because obviously the Premier League is the hardest league in the world. It's the most watched league in the world, and for him to come in and then obviously try and test his abilities out, didn't really work for him. But now, obviously, I can see I reckon he will stay, because think about the amount of stuff that he's doing for Wolves as it is. Like obviously with the Pedro Lima hijacking of getting them from Chelsea and everything, like Wolves are showing us that he is Wolves. He is Wolves' man. So I reckon if he does show out a turnaround well, maybe like if it's a good high offer from like big clubs, let's say like United or the City or wherever, or I reckon. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50, because I reckon parts of him, he wants to stay at Wolves and do a Ruben Neves and stick with us until like a high bid comes in for him, and it's actually like someone where he gets the chances to actually play. Or I reckon he might just stay with us, because with Wolves he has more of a chance to thrive more. He has more of a chance to help us be where we are meant to be in the table. But yeah, that's my thoughts. I mean, I don't reckon he'll leave. Fingers crossed he don't. But you never know. It's Premier League. Anything happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, I do have to agree. I think with a player like Mateus Cunha being our record signing as well, we will only sell him for a significant amount of profit, I do feel. With Wolves, he's also a big fish in a smaller pond compared to, say, his previous club, Atletico Madrid. Top elite side. Whereas he did struggle for form as well as game time in general there. You do have to think, if you're Mateus Cunha, would I be getting the same kind of game time, the same flow? At Wolves, the team revolves around him, his strengths, and that's not necessarily something they're going to cater to you for at a top team. Jacob, what were your thoughts?
I completely disagree. I think if he continues on this form, there's very naive to think he'll be in a Wolves shirt next season. I think we don't keep players who, are doing these kind of returns at Wolverhampton Wanderers, unfortunately. That's not how football works in the modern age. If he keeps doing this return, he gets into the majority of Premier League sides. That's just what we need to come to. There will be a big bid for him in the summer if Ali's on this way, and we won't be able to reject it. We've seen Boaston already taking back some of the shares in the club and everything. So they have chance to sell an asset like Mateus Cunha for the amount of money that it might be between around the 70-80 million if he's on this kind of form. Wolverhampton Wanderers have a player sell, and he's 25. He's in the highlight of his career. I don't think he would, as much as Joseph's love for Wolves. We've got to remember he's a footballer. He's a footballer of his quality is going to want to go and play in the Champions League and make an impact in competitions like this. So I think for Wolves and for Cunha, if he does carry on this form, I don't see him here next season. But let's just enjoy it for the time because you never know. Obviously, I'd love him to be here, but I'd be very naive to say he would stay.
I do feel like you're being very realistic there. I think at certain points in the summer, certain sections of our fan base expected the likes of Pedro Neto to stay. It didn't look like he'd be leaving. Yet later on in the transfer window, a big bid from Chelsea comes in and he also departs. I'm glad you addressed Fosun buying back shares. That was in the news this week surrounding the club. And it seems Fosun are buying back shares they initially sold in the club. Now, whether this is for them looking for more investment or looking up to pack and sell eventually, I would be more inclined to think it's the latter. However, that is a point for another day, in fairness. But I think a player producing Cunha's sort of numbers, Cunha's sort of form, I think the key thing for him at Wolves right now is, whilst he loves the club, has a brilliant fan connection, he is not getting in that Brazil squad, regardless of his numbers. The likes of João Gomez and Andre, they have still been getting picked for Brazil while wearing the old gold. Matheus Cunha, arguably better than both of them. Not even arguably, I'd say almost definitely better than both of them. He hasn't been getting that Brazil selection, and I think, if anything, that would be one of the main reasons he thinks I need to make that jump to a European football playing club. Let's not get distracted just by our Brazilian star man, however. Let's have a look at the rest of the second half. What were our thoughts? Because I thought we were quite slow. We should have pushed for that third goal. I think we got quite comfortable after the 2-0 lead, understandably. I don't think Southampton really turned up. I think they were quite lacking of that final pass. They could have really made something of that match given their possession and their style of football. But what are we saying on the second half overall? Jacob, I'll come to you first.
I was very, very content with it, actually. I feel like we got that second goal. Was it a bit shot? Maybe. But I don't think too much. I think 8-8 still found pockets of space a few times down that left-hand side. Arguably should have got that third goal when he played it across the Bellegarde, who was in the way. But I think, obviously, that was game 11, and we get to win a game. I think the way that we dealt with it when going 2-0 up was very good. Southampton, no disrespect to them, didn't have a sniff after we went 2-0. It was almost like the game was over at that point. I remember saying to you in the ground, I still don't feel confident. That's simply because we forgot what a win feels like. You know, at no point were our backs up against the wall or anything in that game. And I think it was dealt with quite well by O'Neill when we went 2-0 up, in all fairness, because obviously, 10 games in, yet to win a game, only one team's ever stayed up. Having not won in the first 10, while Newcastle did it twice, but one of them was with Saudi investors, January, when decided Kieran Trippier playing for manager. So, I don't think we're going to end up doing. So it was important to get this win. And I think the way we went about it was the ideal way to go. So I don't have any qualms about the way we played in that second half, not going for a third. So I think we were in control, and I'm more than welcoming of that. Bit sitting on a 1-0 in the first half, because as we saw, they did have the ball in the back of there. Anyone could score one. No point did I think Southampton were going to score 3 in that game ever. So very happy how the second half went. Sami agrees.
Yeah, I'm obviously with the like you guys said, with the Nevers at halftime, and then obviously with the chance bringing into the second half while watching it, it was nice to see. Obviously, the fans. Obviously, we're pushing for them goals to be in the back of the net. And obviously, after Cunha's goal, there could have been a chance where we could have scored a third one, like Jacob stated. Obviously, with Bellegarde getting into the box and the ball being laid off to him, and he just slightly misses it. Did that guy have the best form yesterday? I wouldn't say his best form. I reckon he did play well. Obviously, there was just them little bit of chances that could just have a little bit of a tweaking on. But I reckon, it was like you said, Cam, it was a tiny bit slow how we played. But at the end of the day, we got the result that we needed, and you know, if this means that it's the Wolves' redemption arc for us coming back and winning a couple of games, obviously after this game, it's the Wolves' way. After we win one game, it was like last season when we won one game and then we had a nice good run, and then obviously after, we don't want to talk about that, but we have a nice good run of games. So I reckon after this game, it's a boost. It helps us with a boost in our confidence and helps us win the games that we need.
I do have to agree. Right, let's talk about the individual performances. Who are your standouts this week? I have written down in my notes here, I have Mateus Cunha, undoubtedly, Craig Dawson, Ait Nouri, and João Gomez. Any other individual performances you'd like to address, or do you just want to get into the names I've listed?
Well, I don't think about this week, but I was going to say, like, for the current season so far, I was going to bring up Santi Bueno. Obviously, because you saw how he was last season. Obviously, he towards the end of the last season, he did play quite well, and now seeing him getting that game time towards this season, you can see how well he plays. You can see his strength when he's holding that back line, and obviously he's able to make that pass out as well. So yeah, he's another one that I'd mention as well for a good signing from Girona. But yeah, Santi Bueno, he's on there for me, for being one of the mans to watch out for this season.
Jacob?
I mean, my standout was a Norwegian, but not the Norwegian you may think. Not Stan Larsen, a man we met on the train on the way, travelling all the way down from Norway to watch us play. And, you know, we should get him a ticket from Norway every week. If somehow he's watching this, then thank you very much, because he's come down to win. And I said to Cameron, I'm never going to complain about the train journey home again, because Jesus Christ. So he's my standout. But on a serious note, any opportunity I have for João Gomez propaganda, I'm going to do it. So he was brilliant again. You know, setting the bar higher and higher for himself every week at the moment. You know, in a midfield that's so competitive, he's almost making it impossible for himself to be dropped at this moment in time. I think he outshone the captain, Mario Lemina, by a far amount on Saturday. I think Lemina didn't really merit himself to win for Tommy Doyle on Saturday. I think Gomez was the standout next to him. I'm happy Sami mentioned Santi Bueno. I think, again, fantastic on the weekend. So cool, so composed. Even though he only came on for a short amount of time, I thought Rodrigo Gomez, showed great character and great, want to get in that team at times. Didn't stop running when 6 or 7 minutes he came on. There was one where the ball went out on the opposite side of the pitch to where he was, and he bombs it across the box, trying to keep it in. And Rodrigo Gomez is another player I really like. So I just want to highlight, nice to see him come on and put in a good shift, which I think he does every time he does come on. I'd like to see more of him. And I just think that speaks volumes to our squad, where players like Rodrigo Gomez aren't really getting game time. But also the fact that we've got different players we can bring on. We're not seeing the same players come off the bench every week. Carlos Form, that 2 games on the trot, we haven't seen him. Very good player. Andre, the missing person case is still on. Where's he gone? Tommy Doyle not coming on Saturday. We have got such a vast squad full of good players where, we should be able to highlight each of these individuals every week, stand out. Almost getting to that point. Hopefully it does start to get to that point now we've picked on the win.
Right, I love those points. I think João Gomez, another exquisite performance from him. I think he's really started to raise the bar and what we expected the minimum of him this season. I think at the start of the season, he did have a couple of games where he didn't play his best. However, he has really made himself undroppable. I think Mario Lemina, who you briefly addressed, I think he did well with his physicality against the Southampton side. Although I do have to agree, I think it's hard to see how he starts over the likes of Andre or Tommy Doyle, other than the captain's armband around him. I think Dawson was phenomenal, personally, against Southampton. Santi Bueno, like Sami highlighted, I really think he is brilliant. He's really come into his own this season, and his distribution adds so much to that back line. I think Ait Nouri, brilliant again. I think he adds so much. I think an underrated performance this week against Southampton was Toti Gomez. I think he's really helped Ait Nouri flourish in the way that he's moved almost into a left-back role in this formation with 5 at the back, and allows Ait Nouri to make the most of what we all know is his best attributes, being his technical and creative ability. And while Toti might have had quite a quiet game, I think his strength is allowing Ait Nouri that extra creativity, which really makes a difference in the final third. Like, even in that first attack to score Sarabia's goal, Ait Nouri is making a great run to drag out the defence, so Cunha can play the pass through the space into Sarabia. But aside from Cunha, who is the obvious, really, I think you've addressed it. The Norwegian guy on the train, Jacob mentioned, we were on our train from Manchester down to watch Wolves against Southampton this week, and I was next to a bloke on the train, very nice man. He'd come all the way from Norway to watch Wolves, and he said it was his 5th time doing so this season, I think it was. Wow, that is amazing dedication. Shout out to him if he is listening. But I really think that is just incredible dedication for the club. And it's great knowing we have fans like that internationally. I think the next talking point really has to be Gary O'Neill. What are our thoughts on him this week? I've seen the fan base quite divided. Some seem elated now. Some people seem fully back behind him after a win, giving his fist bumps to the South Bank, while others still seem to be asking a lot of questions about him based on the performance we had. 29% possession at home, no matter how you read it, is a very poor stat to allow a team who are widely considered the worst in the league to have 71% of the ball without, may I add, managing a shot on target. But there are still question marks about Gary O'Neill being asked by fans, by pundits, by critics. I'll start with you, Sami. What are your thoughts on Gary O'Neill? How much time has he bought himself with that win heading into the international break?
I reckon he's bought quite a bit. Obviously, we saw how he was last season. Obviously, when we had him in, and it was a bit of a turnaround. Obviously, the first couple of games, he didn't perform at his best whilst managing under us. But then after he gave him a couple of runs towards like the Christmas period era, and then obviously we see big turnarounds. Obviously, beating Chelsea, doing the double over Chelsea, and then doing the double over Spurs. Quite big teams. They are part of the Big Six, as people do say they are. For me, currently, I don't think we should. Obviously, it's nice to see him get a win. Like I said last week, if he didn't win, he has to get gone. But we still can't hide from the fact that it's one win. It's one win in the past 2021 Premier League fixtures that we've had. So obviously it's nice that we've won, and obviously, you know, there are fans that are saying like, okay, we'll need to back Gary O'Neill because, you know, it's a win. Like he's won a game for us. But I still don't think our mind should be blinded by this one win. I reckon you've got to see it from the wider perspective. Is he the right man for the job? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Obviously, I don't want to say Gary O'Neill gone or Gary O'Neill in, because obviously I want to give him a bit more fixtures, because bless his soul, he hasn't had like the best fixture list like recently. Obviously, facing big clubs like Chelsea, Arsenal, and then Villa as well. So yeah, I do feel sorry for him for how we've had our fixture list. So yeah, but I'm on 50-50 with keeping him in and getting him gone, because yes, it's nice. Like we got that turnaround that we needed. We said that we needed the win to help back him, but also we can't hide away from the fact that it's only one win in the past 2021 fixtures that we've had in the Premier League.
I do have to largely agree with you there, Sami. I don't think we can allow ourselves to be blindsided by one win. I think there still has to be some question marks above the head of Gary O'Neill, and I really don't think he can afford to take any comfort from this win, if I'm honest. Jacob, what are your thoughts on the managerial situation?
I think all he's done is delayed it. All he's done is delayed what is going to happen. And if we come back off the international break and we lose to Fulham, we lose to Bournemouth, and let's say for hindsight, other teams around us pick up results, we're back in the position where we are 6 or 7 points off, that 17th position. He's got to go still. As much as I was jubilant about the win on Saturday, I was happy as anyone. It is only papered over the cracks. But there are more ways to look at it. Someone might say, well, unbeaten the last 3 games. We flipped the script. As disappointed as we were about the Crystal Palace game, we didn't lose it. The Brighton game, we deemed a good result. Southampton game was a good result. So, I don't know. I can see why people are starting to say, okay, right, we've got past the tough run of fixtures. We haven't lost since the tough run of fixtures were over. So I can see why people are saying, come on, let's get behind him fully. But there's still those question marks there for me. And the next 2 games are massive for him. I think Fulham away, which we'll touch more on next week, is a very tough game to judge him off. I think they're in very good form. Bournemouth at home, they're below hot and cold. Bournemouth, week very good, week beatable. But can't lose both them games after the international break, even though we won against Southampton.
I do have to agree. I think he may have just bought himself some additional time. I think this is really a win, but depending on our situation later in the season, we could really come back to think, is it good that he won there? You have to think Gary O'Neill could easily have been told to walk had we lost to Southampton this weekend. And ultimately, another manager would have been brought in, maybe the likes of David Moyes or Graham Potter. That's a new manager. David Moyes and Graham Potter have been the most widely touted names for the Wolves hot seat if Gary O'Neill were to leave. And I think if we do continue, like Jacob said, a poor form when we come back from the international break, losing to Fulham, who I would expect us to lose to Bournemouth, a result is also needed in some capacity. And then our fixtures do get easier. But I think results such as the Ipswich game versus Tottenham, nobody expected them to win that. Everyone had wrote them off. And it's really put us back in the doghouse again. I think when teams around us are going to be picking up points like this, but we don't expect them to do, it really does make things not only harder for us, but it makes us have to see the wider perspective. And I do still have a lot of question marks on Gary O'Neill's systems, his substitutional choices. There are players who, like Jacob said, Rodrigo Gomez, for example, very hungry when he came on, chasing down every ball. A lot of these players aren't necessarily getting opportunities, and some of them I do expect must be unhappy. However, these players don't seem to have downed their tools for Gary O'Neill. They seem very behind the manager, encouraging him to go celebrate with the fans, do his fist bumps to the South Bank had we won. However, has he just delayed the inevitable? Only time will tell, unfortunately. But we will see over the due course of the season. Let's look ahead into the international break. How are we feeling about the most boring time in football? Good or bad for Wolves? Sami, I'll start with you.
Are you on about before the international break, or
going into it? Do you think it's good for our form? Bad for it?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say it's good for it. Obviously, the international break, it's only the Nations League. Like, it's not as big as the Euros or the World Cup. So everyone's not really like, go on, England, go on. Like, it's not really, in my opinion, not really like a big competition for us to watch.
I agree.
Yeah. So obviously, the Wolves, if we get a win, like I said, we got that win against Southampton. And with our forms, given recent history, when we do well and then we have an international break or whatever, and then the first couple of games after that, we do slop down a bit. Like, we don't really perform the best that we do. I reckon this international break isn't really ideal for us at the moment. because obviously, given the form that we gave against Southampton and how we played, I reckon if we kept that up and going over to have fixtures like in the continuous weeks, I reckon it will help us maintain that form and everything. Whereas with an international break, obviously there are some players that aren't actually playing for their countries that they're representing. So I reckon some of their forms might be dropping down a bit, but hopefully only time can tell. Only time to tell. We do have a hard fixture against Fulham. Obviously, 2 ex-previous Wolves players going to be playing for them as well. So I reckon that's going to be a bit of a tricky one to win against, but only time will tell.
Yeah, I would agree with Sami there. I think it doesn't come at a great time for us, having just got that win. You know, you'd like to carry on the momentum into the next fixture. You know, because we saw the buzz it kind of created, that full-time whistle, like you said, Cameron. The players encouraging Gary Neal to go to the South Bank, which was met by some people going along with a fist bump. Some people weren't too entertained by it all, which just speaks to the divide of the fan base, really. But yeah, international break. Not only do I not put the right time, I think pointless. You know, who are England even playing? That's a genuine question. I don't know who we're playing against in that way. I don't care for it. I think it's a ruining momentum. Thankfully, we don't have one till March after this. But yeah, thankfully, there's stuff on next weekend to watch that isn't football. You know, we've obviously got the off topic. We've got the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight, which is obviously fight of the century. All going to be watching that. And then
that's on Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah, one. And then we've got John Jones in the UFC after that as well, which is another money grab fight. So that's more what I'm looking forward to with the international break, to be honest.
Well, thank God we have distractions from the Nations League. I do have to agree with some managers' complaints about there being too many international games. I think games like these, the fans really don't care for ourselves, and the players don't seem to care for some of these competitions themselves. I think the Nations League itself is rather needless. I understand what it's qualifiers, but I think a game like an international break like this, could really ruin Wolves' game and create a slump in form when we come back from it. However, on the flip side, if we hadn't won going into this international break, imagine what's going through the players' heads during all that time. But hopefully, no injuries from our internationals. And like you said, there's not one till March. This last year was a really important time in Wolves' season, allowing us to build our form up over Christmas and January and have a real kickabout. But only time will tell how that goes. And I have to say, I think that'll be it for this week. I think we can look forward to Fulham away when we come back from the international break. But until then, enjoy your UFC, enjoy your boxing, and let's enjoy England. But this was the South Bank podcast. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.
Online, on your mobile, and on your smart speaker. You're listening to the voice of a new generation. This is Kick Radio.